Lesson 4, Part 1, Verb Tenses. I'm going to go through a bit of a tense overview, take a look at everything that we've learned so far, because we're about to learn the aorist tense, and there are some things that we've simplified in the past that we need to sort of take a deeper look at to understand before we introduce the aorist tense. So we're going to do that in this part of the lesson. So far we have learned 3 verb tenses, each with active and either middle or middle passive forms. And up until now, we've learned our verb tenses in a simplified form. We did briefly talk about the omicron epsilon theme vowel when we introduced the future, but we didn't really take a good hard look at what was going on. So we're going to do that now. Before learning the aorist tense, it will be helpful for us to take a closer look at what is going on with our verbs. So this is how we learned our verb tenses so far. We had lu-o, lu-ace, lu-a, lu-amen, lu-ete, lu-usi, lu-amai, lu-a, lu-etai, lu-ametha, lu-este, lu-antai, etc. Lu-on, lu-es. And of course, you can pause and read the rest if you want to there. In actuality, the present and future tenses have 3 pieces, not 2, and the imperfect has 4 pieces, not 3. Again, we've talked about this omicron epsilon theme vowel before, but we haven't really stopped and analyzed it yet. So here is what's happening. And that piece between the stem and the endings is called a theme vowel. Now, again, as I've mentioned before, some of these, it's a little hard to split it out. We're going to actually talk about some of that later. And our spacing got messed up over here. Scooch all of those over to the left a little bit in your mind there, and you should be fine. But you should be able to see a bit of what's going on. If you want to take a minute to stop and analyze everything and make some observations, you certainly can. You can pause the video and take a good hard look at that. Now, most verb tenses have a theme vowel between the stem and the ending. For present, imperfect, and future, the theme vowel is omicron or epsilon, depending on the letter that starts the ending. And again, this is in the indicative mood. It'll change when we get to other moods far later in this course. If the ending starts with a mu or a nu, the theme vowel is an omicron. If the ending starts with any other letter, the theme vowel is an epsilon, which is why for our participles, we only saw omicron theme vowels, because for the present active participles, the next thing was a nu. For the present middle passive participles, the next thing was a mu. So we only saw omicron theme vowels. All right. Now, you may have noticed that not all the forms listed above appear to have a theme vowel. That's because the theme vowel and endings have sort of merged together. Here are what the actual endings are. Our primary A endings are actually nothing, si, e, men, te, si. Now, hopefully you're looking at this and going, what on earth is going on in those 2 spots? We're going to talk about them in a moment. I'm glad you observed that. Then we have my, si, tai, metha, se, tai. Only thing unusual there is that si, which we've talked about that before, how it's a little weird. And we've seen it on occasion, like with dunamai, became dunasai, and that kind of a thing. So we've seen that before, but normally we get an eta with an iota subscript. We're going to talk about that. Secondary A endings, n, s, nothing, men, te, n. That actually is perfectly normal. Nothing weird happened with any of those. Yay. Secondary B, main, sa, ta, metha, ste, nta. Again, only weird thing happening is that sa right there. So we got 4 spots that are weird. So let's talk about them. And a dash means that there's no ending. So in the present active indicative first singular and future active indicative first singular, lu-o and lu-so, with no ending, the omicron lengthens into an omega. So that's how we got lu-o or leg-o or baptides-o. There was an omicron theme vowel and there was a nothing ending, so the omicron lengthened. The present active indicative second singular and future active indicative second singular, lu-ace and lu-sace, primary A endings here for the second singular. Anytime there's a sigma between 2 vowels, something weird happens. Normally it's going to drop, though it doesn't here. The sigma and the iota switch places. But there are going to be other forms of other verbs where the sigma and the iota are going to be in this order. That's why we're paying attention to this now. For the present active indicative third person plural and future active indicative third person plural, so that's primary A endings, lu-usi and lu-susi. You'll notice there's an upsilon there, not a nu. The nu is a weak consonant. It will often change the vowel in front of it, or in this case, the nu joins with the omicron and makes the diphthong u. Why does it do that? It's how the language works. It's not how our language works, but that's how Greek works. It actually follows good linguistic morphophonemic rules. All right, imperfect active indicative, second person singular, that's primary be endings. Elue, again, the sigma dropped out because sigmas like to drop out if they're between vowels or do other weird things. So the epsilon theme vowel lengthened to an eta. Then we had eta, alpha, iota. That's way too many vowels in a row. So the alpha drops out. So then we have eta, iota. We can never have that structure like that. The iota has to subscript. And that's what happened. Imperfect middle passive indicative second singular. So that's a secondary be ending, the sa. Elu. Again, we had a sigma between two vowels. So we have epsilon theme vowel, sigma omicron. So the sigma drops out. The epsilon and the omicron contract or blend to make the diphthong oo. Now you might be thinking, why does it make the diphthong oo? It actually follows good rules that we'll learn later when we learn about contracting verbs. All right, so here are the tense formulas that we've learned so far. Present active indicative, first stem, omicron, epsilon, theme vowel, primary A endings. Difference between that and the present middle passive indicative is that we have B endings. Difference between those and the imperfects are that we've added an augment for the imperfect because it's a past tense, so it's a secondary tense, so it's also going to get secondary endings because past tenses, augments, secondary endings all go together when you're talking about the indicative. All right, future, only difference between that and the present is the second stem instead of the first stem, going to have primary endings there. So a couple notes, A endings always go on active verbs, B endings go on middle passive verbs. Have that and you'll get the last part right most of the time. Secondary tenses are past tenses. Secondary tenses have augments. Secondary tenses has secondary endings. Get that all together. That'll get a large piece of your puzzle. Tenses that are not secondary or past tenses are primary and take primary endings. The omicron epsilon theme vowel is used in the indicative mood. We'll learn other moods later that take a different theme vowel. That's what that piece means. Don't forget the second stem usually ends with a sigma, but not always. Summary. Theme vowel is a vowel between the stem and ending of a verb that tells the mood. An omicron theme vowel is used in the indicative before endings that begin with mu or nu. An epsilon theme vowel is used in the indicative before endings that do not begin with a mu or nu. When a sigma is between two vowels, it drops out or switches places with the second vowel. When multiple vowels are together, they often contract or blend. Nu is a weak consonant and can blend with the vowel before it. A endings go on active verbs, B endings go on middle passive verbs. Secondary tenses are past tenses. Secondary tenses have an augment. Secondary tenses have secondary endings. Tenses that are not secondary or past tenses are primary and take primary endings. You will need to memorize these endings. Now, if you've already memorized them with the omicrons and epsilons, you can just take off the omicrons or epsilons and memorize these four spots. This one here, this one here, this one here, and this one here. And just sort of mentally make that shift. Oops, and this one down here, sorry, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or you can memorize them by themselves, whatever works best for your brain, but make sure that you are able to reproduce this chart right here. That's going to be important. And then we have our 6 tense formulas. Make sure that you know those well.